Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 371 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this wonderful Monday, Richard?
Hey Seth, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. I suddenly got a lot better like an hour ago, thanks to an announcement from Wizards. But yeah, I'm doing super good. We'll get to that in a minute though. Before we do, we got another co-host in Krem. Krem, good morning. How are you today?
Oh, I am great after a very short round of announcements this past week. So yeah, pretty excited to get into today's episode.
Oh yeah, we got some good topics today. So overview of what we're talking about. We got a sneak peek at new Kapena, I should say.
New Kapena?
Kapena. That's spelled like Kapena. Of new Kapena last week. So we got a few spoilers to talk about. Not a ton, but we did want to get into it and the information we got about the set. We got a surprise BNR announcement today, which is, oh my god, so sweet. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then we want to talk a little bit about what formats see the most play on Magic Arena. We got some data on that that's kind of interesting. And of course, answer some fish mail questions. So that is the plan for today's cast. Before we get into it though, a reminder that our show is brought to you today by Card Conduit. And we've been telling you about Card Conduit, a great way to sell your Magic collection in their curated shipment service that lets you sell your valuable cards with a reduced service fee for a while now. And as long as your cards have a retail value of $2 or more, you can send in as many of them as you want and still just pay the 5% service fee. Like with all Card Conduit services, you don't gotta sort your cards, you don't gotta grade your cards, you get to skip all those hassles and just safely package everything up and ship them out, and you'll even get a detailed report with the results. So you can check out Card Conduit's curated shipment option as a way to buy list with fast processing, optimized prices, and the low service fee of just 5%, and you even get another 10% off by going to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thanks so much to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic, and let's start with spoilers. So last Thursday, during the weekly MTG stream, we got a sneak peek at our newest set, a new Kapena, and we didn't get a ton of information. We have a handful of cards to talk about, including a cycle that is pretty exciting. But anyway, let's talk spoilers. Richard, why don't you guide us through the few cards that we got from the set?
All right, new Capenna, the next standard legal set, coming out in May. We have Broker's Ascendancy. Bat colors green, white, blue, enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control.
So, this card's interesting. I think the card itself is fine. Trigger on your end step is nice, so you get some immediate value. We do have things that care about counters in standard, like modifier or whatever, and even more in older formats. The loyalty counter aspect is also kind of intriguing. That's something we don't get that often. It's pretty difficult to add extra loyalty counters to things. So I could certainly see uses for this card, although honestly, I think I'm most hyped that we're getting a whole cycle of Ascendancies and finishing the cycle that started back in Cons, because Ascendancies have traditionally been pretty powerful. Like the Jeskai one sees play back to modern and combo decks. A lot of them saw some standard play. So even though this one seems a little narrow, like I think you got to be a modified deck or a Super Friends deck or something to really want it. I'm super hyped to see the cycle being completed and getting the rest of the 10.
Yeah, like the cycle is going to be pretty sweet. They seem a little more powerful, actually. I hope this isn't like the strongest one, but I just have a feeling that this is probably going to be much better than the last cycle. Because, I mean, outside of Jeskai Ascendancy, I think the others weren't really all that good, unless I'm remembering incorrectly.
Yeah.
The Mardu one was...
I feel like the Abzan one, I think, saw a little play in, like, aristocrat-style decks during its time. But yeah, like, they saw some standard play, I think, but none of them really broke out beyond standard at all outside of Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yeah, like if the average power level of that, like, triggering at the end step, of like if each of these ascendancies are triggering at the end step, I'm pretty excited. Because I think with where standard is now, you really do have to have stuff that happens almost immediately and on your turn.
Yeah, I would say you guys are putting this very nicely. This card, this card is a little jank, especially for the first card they preview out of Kapena. It's an awkward choice. So the old cycle, they all triggered on something, like whenever something happens. So like Jeskai Ascendancies, like whenever a non-creature spell is cast. Teamer is like whenever you have a creature with power 4 or greater. So you can kind of get immediate effect out of them. Broker's Ascendancy, you need to wait until the next turn, because you need to wait until your end step. So you've already attacked, and then you get counters, and then you hope to untap with everything. So it seems really slow, and there's no real way to break it, I don't think, right? You just play it the fair way, and that seems a little slow for my taste. For 3 mana of like 3 different colors, and you have to wait the next turn to get some value, and even then the value is a little questionable. So I hope the rest of the cycle is actually more hasty. Like you can get immediate value out of it somehow, like either on your cast triggers or maybe before combat or something, and get in there. But yeah,
I mean, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about this in commander decks? Like, is this, like, let's say you're playing a counter theme deck or a Super Friends deck. Is this in consideration? Is it an auto include? Do you not even think about playing it at all? It's just not enough? Where do you come down for commander purposes?
Auto include. This card's great. If you can play it in these colors, hell yeah. This is exactly what I want, right? I don't have to do anything. It just accrues value on its own. I don't have to pay mana. I don't have to cast anything. I just have to have planeswalkers, right? Or a creature. So, like, I definitely like that a lot more.
I'd rather play something else. I'd rather play a Nissa or something, or Cathar's Crusade. Like, there's a lot of things that add counters, but like much quicker than dirtily watch me build my board and then wipe everything before I get to attack. Maybe if you have like doubling season and like Super Friends out or something, you can go like ham with this. But I mean, if you already have a doubling season, like, do you really need this card, right? So yeah.
I think I'm a little higher on it than you are, Richard. Like, I don't think it's like insane or anything, but I think it's powerful enough to see play. Like, if I was playing a counters theme deck in Commander, I would probably run this. Like, triggering on the end step is nice. It's not, immediate, like, beginning of combat, so you get to attack with your newly buffed creatures or something, but you're still getting something the first turn rather than having to wait till your next upkeep. So that's helpful. I think it's good enough, especially, I don't know, because we have Modify running around. That's what I'm mostly excited about. Like, putting a counter on everything has a lot of value. If you got Kadama going or some of the other synergies that just care about like how many modified creatures you have, this is a pretty efficient way to do it. I've played like a Felidar Retreat in Standard, which is sort of similar. You don't get the option to make creatures, but still, if you make your land drop, you put a counter on everything. It's a fairly powerful effect. So I think this card has a chance to be good, but I definitely think it's not busted or anything like that. I think a solid mid-tier rare, I would say.
Is it Retreat like much better and like less mana intensive, like less color intensive?
That is the challenge with all the Ascendancies, honestly. And I think that's easy to overlook. You see it and you're like, okay, 3 mana, that's sufficient. But 3 mana of 3 different colors is kind of another question. So that is definitely a concern. Like the number of decks that could potentially play this probably won't be very high, because how many decks are going to be in Bant mana? So that definitely does limit its potential homes, I would say. Although if you are in those colors, I think this is roughly as powerful, I would say, as Felidar Retreat. It's like less mana. You don't get the upside of maybe making creatures, which is a problem, but you also don't have the downside of needing to make land drops, because sometimes you don't have a land and you don't trigger your Felidar Retreat. Grim knows all about that. Yeah. Like, Grim, you probably never have triggered a Felidar Retreat, but you would trigger this every turn. Plus, I think we're overlooking the Super Friends part.
Triple activate Felidar Retreat on the same turn, though, Seth.
That's true.
This also
is
powerful in its own way, at least standard speaking, because of the exact same, like, people are overlooking this too. It's that multicolored cards are at an all-time high right now. Kaido is absurdly cracked in standard. Why? Because nothing removes him. So
it gets around the vanishing verse. That's a big deal.
It is. It seems like, okay, normally, like, I am the biggest advocate of like, oh, if it, I'm gonna have to make sure it's worthwhile if it's like, gonna die to Doomblade or a removal spell. This card and Kaido, they're 3 mana, they're multicolored. Those are hard to deal with right now. And that's being seen throughout like multiple decks and whatnot. Like the Orzhov control deck is now like trying to figure out how to like kill it, and like I'm seeing people play whatever the black-white spell is with flashback that exiles a permanent when they sack a creature, because But the issue is they need it to be instant speed now because Kaido phasing out. So like this is another one of those things, right? I mean, we've also seen in Alchemy the nerfed version of the 2-mana 1/1 or whatever, the 2-mana 1/1 that puts a counter on your combat step. That got moved to the end step, and that still gets played, right? Of course, that's on a creature, on a body, and much earlier on the curve and much easier to cast. But because this is multicolored, I do think this effect is worthwhile, much like Seth has mentioned, modified.
I mean, and I also think, like, we might be overlooking the Planeswalker aspect a little bit, which I think is a meaningful upside. We've seen some Super Friends decks already in Kamigawa Standard. Like, that's been a thing. We got enough strong Planeswalkers that you can kind of build around them. And being able to get an extra loyalty counter, that gets you to your ultimates, like, so much quicker. It offers some amount of protection. So I think that's another potential home. And I do think we have enough pieces to actually make a Super Friends list work in Standard. So far, they've mostly been Esper, but it seems easy enough to go into Bant if you want to, or be 4-color, especially considering some of the other cards we're getting in New Capenna that we have to talk about still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the most exciting part. Like, one uptick closer to your ultimate is worth a lot more than a +1/+1 counter on your team. So being able to get to your ultimate, that will win you the game, right? So I think that's the most legit case for this card. So the other thing Wizards spoiled was the completion of the Triome cycle. So we're getting the rest of the cycle.
Yes!
Naya, Esper, Bant, Grixis.
Say it again, Richard. Say it again, Richard.
Mono green.
Incorrect. You chose the wrong answer. Okay, yeah, let's just skip right on over the green ones. Let's talk about Xander's Lounge and Rafine's Tower. Okay, these were like one of the like sweetest land cycles to have come out recently, right? And like the biggest thing for me is Esper's kind of like always had a good mana base when it comes to its spells. You know, all these other colors, they've always had it good, right, on their like mana costs. But Grixis has always been a meme, right? Because like, what is Grixis? Pretty much a terrible mana base and greedy spells, right? But now that Xander's Lounge, I'm not going to say that all of a sudden triple black is like where like the easiest thing to cast in the world, but Xander's Lounge really helps, and being able to tutor this out with the land types. Oh yeah. Xander's Lounge is exactly what I want. You can catch me what is it, in the Maestro gang and chilling in this lounge. I am going to be jamming this like I was going to jam Grixis anyways, but this is just like exactly what I've been asking for.
These cards are, I mean, I don't even really care about the color combinations. I'm just excited to see the rest of them because I honestly believe that Triomes are like the best land cycle Wizards has printed since maybe Shocklands originally came into existence. Like, they're so good. I think that the play rate can even back those up. If you include everything, Commander along with 60 card formats, I think these are just like the most played lands that Wizards has printed. They're ranked second to the Shocks in Commander. They see tons of play in Standard when they're legal. They see play in Pioneer, a bit of play in Modern. They see play in Historic. These lands are they're great. They're fetchable. They can cycle as an upside. They add all 3 colors. Everyone kind of expected this. I think we were talking about Triomes hopefully being completed once we got to New Kapena, which is finally happening. And I'm super hyped. Like the lands are great, and I'm glad we get all of them now. Like it's a big deal from everything from Commander to Standard to even older formats.
Seth, you can't just be throwing completed around that easily. We just lost the Planeswalker. Okay, it's been on set. Give us a minute, Seth.
I like them. I don't like the naming. I hate how Wizards doesn't have a uniform naming. So if you want to search up a card, I want to type Triome and find all the Triomes. But now they're like Jetmir's Garden, Rafine's Tower, Xander's Lounge. So you need to actually remember all these names. And I guarantee you in 3 months, Krim can't name any green one. So
well, I know one. Well, not really name it, but I know the boxing ring. That's Jund. But that's because that's just like bad Grixis, right? Because it's got the green in it.
I mean, you're still just going to call them Triomes, right? Like, I think I would refer to the entire cycle as Triomes, and I don't know if I'll even bother to learn the names, or if it'll just be like the Jund Triome or the Esper Triome.
Yeah. But finding them is a pain if you forget the names. Like, if
That's
you
true.
forget the name of a shock or a dual land, right? And you need to actually find it, it's like a big pain because they don't have a, standard naming, right?
Yeah.
It's also weird that half of them are triomes and they all have the triome name, and then the other half just all has these random scattered names. So it definitely is awkward. I will give you that for sure, although I don't know, I'm just going to call them triomes.
Would it be that different if they just named it Xander's Triome,
I think Triumph doesn't make any sense in this world. But what if they named it like Mob Boss House or something? And like had them all have the same suffix, so at least you only had 2 to remember.
For me, it's very simple. I know Xander's Lounge, Rafine's Tower, Boxing Ring, and I don't know the other 2.
Boxing ring. You go to the store and like one boxing ring.
Do you have the showcase art of the boxing
version.
ring?
Yeah.
Yeah, like this land cycle is needed though. Now I have a something to go with my crumbling necropolis. Also, did you know that Grixis just got a triome? God, I'm so excited.
Also, just a small little complaint while we're on the topic. I was honestly a little disappointed with the cards that we got from the special spoiler stream this time. Like, it was kind of hyped up and advertised for like a week ahead of time, and we only really got one non-triome card out of the entire stream. So I gotta say, I was expecting a little bit more. I mean, the triomes are certainly hyped, but I was kind of surprised we didn't get a little more information or a few more cards from the set during the stream. So something to keep in mind for the future. Is
it just me, or am I just happy that we didn't get more, right? Because I'm still in Neon Dynasty, right? I'm still in Neon Dynasty.
But then maybe they just shouldn't have done an early sneak peek stream too. I think there's an argument for that I was kind of like, wow, I still have all these Kamigawa decks I want to build. Why am I talking about new Kapena cards already? So I don't know. It was definitely interesting, but I'm hyped for triomes regardless.
I am really excited for whatever. Okay, not the full art triome stuff, because I believe that's just like the gang's like decal, like logo, right? But what's the other alternate art called? I don't know what that one is.
Showcase.
Is that still Showcase? Okay. Because the
Golden Age. So the Showcase ones are like, I don't know what they are.
Art
They're
Deco.
like these brown things. The borderless ones have like the symbol for each house, right? So those are the
gang.
borderless ones
I think it's
you're
a
talking
gang.
about. Gang, house,
but
Gryffindor. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yo, like I love.
So, what do you guys think
arts.
of these alternate versions,
dude? Xander's Lounge looks so cool. It's like the classy, like, kind of mob boss, like bright lights are this, and then of course Boxing Ring looks even cooler, because it's like, it looks like you're boxing in Area 51 of like just, Area 51. and yeah, like, well, Rafine's Tower and whatever the other 2 are look okay. Like, but Xander's Lounge and Boxing Ring are super sweet. So I'm super all for the cocktail dad rock looking Xander's Lounge and all of that.
I don't really like the borderless versions that much. I'm kind of mad. They're all very gold and don't really, I don't know. They don't really describe their colors very well to me, which I guess is on theme with the past triomes for the borderless versions, which also didn't really look like their colors that much.
It's just a slit.
You think so?
Yeah, like, well,
it's the light thing going through the middle, which is much better than the pure purple triomes, I would say.
I do like the showcase a lot, though. At first, the border was a little bit, I was unsure on the border, but then the more I thought about it, I don't know. It reminds me of like Vegas and just like gaudy over the topness. So I think it fits the what I'm imagining the flavor and theme of this set to be. So even though it took me a little while to adjust to the showcase frame, I really like it, and I love the art on them. I think the art is like top tier for sure.
Can you hear the saxophones and the swing dancing? Can you hear all of it?
The art is amazing, but the border is so ugly on the showcase. I can't.
Really?
I can't. I don't like the border on the showcase. But the art itself is fine. I like the art in them. Same with Broker's Ascendancy. The art is cool, but like the border is just so.
I think it makes sense with the style they're trying to go for. And I specifically think the border around the showcases are super sweet. And then it just complements the art. I don't like the full art ones. I think the full art ones are just kind of medium. like at best. But yeah, like the showcase ones are exactly where I want to be. Although those definitely don't showcase what colors they are whatsoever.
So what ones are you playing? You can put any of the options in your deck. You going for the pack versions, the showcase versions, or the borderless?
Showcase, 100%.
Pack.
You're going pack. I'm probably going showcase too, I think.
And
Pack looks nice though.
I'm probably gonna also whiteboarder them if I can.
Of course you are, Krim. Of course you are.
Of course.
So one other thing I want to ask you all about the preview stream before we move on. What do you think about the little bit of information we got about the families or the gangs or whatever, the color combination? So this is like Shards of Alara shards, essentially. It's the 3 colors that Marrow compared it to like Khans of Tarkir as far as getting a lot of support for the 3 color pairings. And we got some weird tidbits about like Bant being demon lawyers, which is like really, really strange. Apparently, Grixis is vampire assassins. We have druids coming back in Naya. What do you think about the themes of these families? More hyped, less hyped, don't care?
If this means I can make a Grixis Vampires deck for Commander, throw me, like, I am on board. I am down with the Maestros. I was down with Grixis no matter what, because, ride or die, but like, if the color combination for Grixis to be good as Vampires, then sign me up. I'm an aggro player next tier.
Surprise, Nissa has joined the Maestro.
No! No!
I don't know. It depends on how Wizards makes the cards. Whatever they say doesn't really matter to me, but when I see the cards, depends if I like them or not. So far it's just whatever. I don't care. We'll see if they're cool cards or not. And cool flavor wise, not just power wise, right? So we'll see how it goes.
I'm really intrigued by Bant Demons. Like that's just something. I actually searched for demons after they announced that was what the family or the gang was about, and I don't believe there's any demons in all of Magic's history in those colors. So I'm really curious. Is there one that's not on? I searched on Moto. Maybe there's one that's not on Moto that I missed.
I could have sworn there was. That's why, because you looked on Moto. I'm pretty sure there's a Commander deck one, right? And it's like got green in it. Like I don't remember. Let me see here. Green demon. Like yeah, like I'll see if I can find it later. But I could have sworn there was a recent.
Oh, there's Daemogoth Titan, I guess, which is hybrid Golgari mana. That's the one that's in standard, like the 11/10 for 4 that sacrifices stuff whenever it does anything. So I guess that's like sort of green. And then I guess Garuda is also a Demon Kraken, which is blue-black hybrid mana. So I guess maybe those like sort of kind of count a little bit, but it's still pretty color shifted. I'm definitely intrigued by how the color shifting goes, and interested to see Grixis Vampires, and we haven't had Druid support in a while. Also, this is the set that gets Commander 2022 along with it, so we're getting the full run of 5 Commander decks, 1 for each color combination. So we're gonna get a ton of exciting stuff out of this, and I'm super hyped. But we should probably move on because we got another surprise topic. This morning I was preparing for the podcast, and I was like, oh, what are we gonna talk about other than spoilers? And then Wizards came through with a out of the blue VNR announcement. Richard, what did that announcement actually say?
All right, effective immediately. Lurrus of the Dream Den is banned in Pioneer and Modern. And in Pauperland, we have Galvanic Relay and Disciple of the Vault banned. Expedition Map unbanned.
Expedition Map unbanned? What?
No,
I'm just
so
kidding.
Pauper, I haven't really played
I don't
Pauper recently. I don't really have a strong opinion about those. I'm trusting that the new Pauper panel is doing the right thing for the format. So what I'm hyped about is Lurrus being gone. Oh my goodness, I am so incredibly excited. Lurrus is a card I wanted banned in Modern, and Pioneer is like a bonus. I want it banned everywhere. I want it to not exist, but I wanted this for a long time. I was really disappointed when the last BNR didn't do anything for Modern. I thought maybe that meant Wizards didn't think that Lurrus was a problem. So this is a huge gift for me personally, but also for the Modern format. Like Lurrus is just, it's such a miserable card in so many different ways. It's always there staring back at you. Wizards cited 31% of decks that get 4 wins or better on Magic Online are Lurrus decks in Modern. Our numbers on the site we have a slightly different formula, but I think it was 36%. So 1 out of every 3 decks essentially in Modern is a Lurrus deck. And that means a lot of cards don't see play. Like, as a Jund player, you know this, Richard, like you can't play Liliana anymore. You can't play Bloodbraid Elf anymore. These really powerful classic cards for your archetype, because they come with this additional opportunity cost of not being able to play Lurrus as your companion. So we've just seen month by month, the Modern format consolidate around Lurrus. Like a year ago, it was 17% or something of the meta. It was all the way up to 31, 36%, depending on what numbers you use. And it just kept heading more and more in that direction. So this not only gets rid of Lurrus, a super obnoxious card to play against and a super powerful card, but it also frees all these other cards that were kind of like shadow banned almost. Like they weren't technically banned, but you just couldn't play them. Me and Krim ran into this in spoiler season all the time, where we'd be doing our like top 10 Modern cards, and there would be a really sweet 3-drop, and we'd be like, oh yeah, this card, you know, it's really sweet, it's powerful enough to see play in Modern, but it doesn't work with Lurrus, so it's not even like in the conversation, because you're not going to drop Lurrus to play this card. So I think this is just a great decision by Wizards, and it wasn't going to get better. It was just going to keep getting worse as more powerful cheap cards were printed. We're going to see the rate just keep climbing and climbing. So this is just all around really, really awesome news. It has me really hyped to play those formats. And then in Pioneer, Lurrus didn't feel as miserable to me because you don't have like Mishra's Bauble and some of the easy loops for it, but it still saw a ton of play, and it still would keep seeing more play. And Wizards mentioned that in their announcement. Like, as we print more cards into Pioneer, the Lurrus' share of the metagame is just going to keep growing as there's more and more 2 or less mana value cards that can work with it. So I'm glad they just got rid of it there as well. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Hyped?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think it was like a power level thing. It was just because like the free real estate aspect of Lurrus, right? Like, why not? And I'm just happy to that permanents that are above 2 mana can now get played again. Like it is very nice to see, especially as you had mentioned, anytime a new set comes out, it was just like, okay, well, this doesn't play well with Lurrus, or you essentially had to filter whatever picks if it played with Lurrus. So like, yeah, like it's just nice to see maybe different cards get played. Like pretty much as you had mentioned, the shadow ban has been lifted.
Thank God we can play Jund again. Nice. the stupid bobble into whatever nonsense and people calling this deck Jund. I'm like, oh my goodness. Finally, like 75% of the card pool is unlocked. We can play regular cards again. I'm surprised it took Wizards this long. Like Krim said, it's not a play pattern or power level thing, right? It's you have a card that's banning like 75% of your card pool. I do not see how this keeps staying around, yet it did. But Wizards finally got rid of it. Now you can play normal cards again. Your curve does not end at 3. So yeah, I'm very happy about this. I don't know if this makes Liliana any good, but you can now at least try to play it.
I mean, I think the other thing I really like about this banning is it feels relatively painless, because one of the concerns of bannings is it really can be painful to players who invest a lot of money in an expensive deck and expensive cards, and then that deck becomes illegal. But there aren't too many decks that I can think of that are Lurrus decks in the sense that they need Lurrus to exist. Like, if you look where Lurrus sees play, Death Shadow, Hammer Time, Jund, Prowess, Burn, those style of decks, those decks all existed without Lurrus. They were fine without Lurrus. So you're still going to be able to play Death Shadow. You're still going to be able to play Jund and Burn and all those archetypes. You just won't have Lurrus anymore. So I feel like this doesn't really hurt players financially too much, and if you had a deck that had Lurrus as a companion, you can probably just keep running that deck. Maybe you throw in a little bit more expensive cards that you can actually play now that you don't have to worry about the companion restriction. But I don't know, are there any decks that just die because of this? I can't think of any, honestly, that just go from, you know, being legitimate tier decks to not existing because Lurrus isn't around anymore.
I'm going to call false on that for Moto players. If you forked over $180 for a playset of Mishra's Baubles, you are extremely, extremely sad at the demise of the Nightmare Cat. Because what do you do with Baubles now? Nothing, right? So So yeah, your archetypes are still alive, but there are some pretty expensive cards, at least on Moto. In paper, baubles are about like $10, $11 each, so it's not too bad. But the $200 bauble nerf is is gonna hurt those Moto players.
Yeah, it's true. Bobble probably loses the most out of all this as far as cards that just get worse. Bobble, and then other like cheap card raw sack stuff like Soul Guide Lantern and Dress Down and those type of cards. Not that they are unplayable anymore, but maybe you play Leyline of the Void now rather than Soul Guide Lantern because you don't have Lurrus, so there's not really any reason not to. And I think cards that get better, and this is what really excites me. We mentioned Liliana, but all of a sudden, like maybe your Hammer Time deck can play a sort of whatever, Fire and Ice or something. Fulminator Mages. There's so many cards that used to be powerful before the Lurrus meta took over that I think are still playable modern cards that are back in the conversation again. So it's going to be really exciting the next couple of weeks to see how modern develops. Like this is a brand new format in a very real sense with 30+% of decks like losing one of their key cards.
We all know how it's going to develop. It's now just okay. So there are some issues I have with this. Okay. The issues are, well, first off, I still I've been running into Amulet Titan. And I think that Amulet Titan just becomes the clear-cut one of the best decks.
Blood Moon Crim. Learn to love the Blood Moon.
Boseiju does not care anymore.
That is true.
That's the problem. I'm like, oh, this would be great. Like, oh, a Blood Moon would be great here. Oh, wait, they just Boseiju'd me anyways. So Boseiju really boosted the power of that deck. And now that, like, I'm not, like, as Richard is, like, as you both mentioned, right, or previously mentioned, that there is no one deck that just like gets invalidated because of the loss of Lurrus. I do think that, I don't know. I mean, is it not that just Amulet decks are like the clear-cut winner from this? Like they're just now moving to the number one deck. On top of that, I've been saying it before, and I'll say it again. I think this is gonna sound like a meme, but like Mishra's Bauble seems easily abusable, and at some point, I think that card should go.
We'll see how safe it is without Lurrus. Maybe it'll just be fine. Although
maybe not today.
Maybe not tomorrow. That way. Yeah, I mean, anything that's free and offers value, I'm skeptical of. I'm kind of like that with Manamorphose, too. But I'm like, sooner or later, like, this is just going to be broken again. The right piece comes along, and it's, like, insane. So I would be fine with those cards being banned. Although, honestly, like, I'm pretty happy with where Modern is at now that Lurrus is gone, at least in the short term. I think, as far as Titan decks, I think they are a winner. I think anything that doesn't have Lurrus has got to be considered one of the winners, even though, as I said before, I don't think you just straight up lose your deck if you're Death Shadow or Burn or something, have Lurrus anymore. But I think Amulet Titan, Yorion decks, obviously, Murktide Regent is another big top tier deck that doesn't actually use Lurrus. So I think those decks get a little bit better. I think one really interesting question is, what do you think about the rest of the companion? So, like, a big part of why Lurrus was broken is the companion mechanic and how it works, how you always have access to this card, even with the nerf where it costs 3 mana to put it in your hand, that made it slightly fairer. Like, Lurrus was obviously still just way too good. Do you think we're going to be going through this same process with other companions? Like, now that Lurrus is gone, are we going to see more Yorion decks? Are we going to see more Kahira decks or other companions? Or do you think this kind of is enough? Like, Lurrus was just so good and by such a huge margin the best of the companions that getting rid of it is going to make the mechanic relatively fair.
I mean, I think that what other companion gets like played in Modern? I think it's just Yorion, right?
Yorion and Kahira. Kahira I see quite a bit in control decks, like, and also elementals, but
Right. Now, an elemental, sure, maybe Kahira is like decent, but I don't think that every deck is going to just randomly start playing. Like, the restrictions on a lot of the other stuff makes it so that it's very specific to a deck, right? And I don't even like Kahira in control decks. I don't know why you're wasting a sideboard slot in a very wide open format for a 3/2. Like if you trust me, you have better ways to win, right? Like, so I don't think any of these other cards are on the level of Lurrus. Lurrus was absurd to begin with, right? And we knew this going into like spoiler season, right? Of Ikoria, right? Like that Lurrus was going to be good. Maybe not to the level that it became, but like that card was just absolutely busted with all the easily abusable things, the recursion, the value in older formats. I'm not imagining a world where Kahira or whatever the ooze is, where you play all the same type of spells, is going to randomly take over Modern.
Yeah, I mean, like Yorion is more universally applicable for decks, right? Like Kahira is very specific. Like Control plays it as a body just cuz, right? But Yorion can be played in like Blink decks, in Control decks, and things like that.
But
I don't think it's the same level as Lurrus because it doesn't nerf your entire card pool. It just makes your deck fatter, and if you want that, I guess, right? So I think it's fine. Like, you know, like if whatever deck with Yorion in it is too powerful, I think there could be an argument to ban something in that deck versus the Yorion itself. So I think it's going to depend on how the meta shapes and what the decks look like. But, you know, Yorion I can see on the chopping block, but I don't really care for it. It's not the same as Lurrus, where like literally every card they printed was useless. You don't have that same problem with, you don't like, does this blink? No, it doesn't. Useless. Like you don't have that same criteria. So I think Yorion is probably fine for now.
Somewhere
like, there are
in
other
the
cards
world,
in Modern I'd rather put on the chopping block before Yorion.
somewhere in the world, there's a mill player upset at you, Richard. What are you talking about, dude? 80 cards? Come on.
I think I mostly agree. I think you made a really good point that Yorion doesn't limit the card pool the way Lurrus does. Right now, Yorion's 8% of decks, which is definitely perfectly fine. I think there's a chance that it keeps ticking up, but at least with Yorion, you're able to play everything. If anything, you're able to play more. You have to play more of everything in your deck. So rather than like limiting the card pool, it actually maybe in a weird way makes more cards playable that wouldn't show up if you didn't have to fill those extra 20 slots. So I think if we got to a point where Yorion was, you know, like Lurrus, pushing, you know, 35-40% of the meta, that would be a concern. Like any companion being at that rate would be a concern. But I definitely agree that it's not nearly as problematic, even if it is popular as Lurrus would be. So I think Modern, maybe it's in a good spot, or at least we'll see. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how the meta shakes out from this. Worst case, something else is broken. Primeval Titan or some of the Modern Horizon stuff ends up being the big winner out of all this, and then we can always ban things again in the future. But for now, I'm just so excited not to have Lurrus staring back at me like every other match or every third match that I play in Modern. Like, it's just such a big relief. It was deflating. It's like psychological warfare. Every time you fire up a game and you see the Lurrus staring back at you, I just kind of like groan inside. It's like, oh, this again, every time. So I'm super excited for Modern. What about Pioneer? Any Pioneer thoughts on this, or...
I had a question for you, Seth. Wait.
Yeah.
If 36% of the time you're deflated seeing a Lurrus sitting across from you, what about 35% of the time you see a monkey sitting across from you?
Well, that was Seth's threshold. Monkey? That was his threshold. Yeah. You can't go above 35%.
Is that 1% the difference?
No. So, okay. So I should clarify this. The difference is... Lurrus is always there. I want to say it's always in your hand, but it's not technically in your hand. But it's always there from the beginning of the game, looking back at you from the exile zone or whatever it is. There's games when, even though the stupid monkey, Ragavan, is in 35% of decks, almost as much as Lurrus, sometimes you don't see it. Even if you're playing against a Lurrus decks, you don't always draw it, and that's perfectly fine. So I think that because of how the companion mechanic works, it makes Lurrus even more, I don't know, depressing to play against, at least for me, just because it's always there. There's not a chance that they're not going to draw at this game because it's always there, because that's what Companion does.
Well, Seth, you just have to be like me and be completely inept at Moto, and you never see it because you actually forget that there's an option to see it. So, yeah, you could be like me. I've been living in bliss the whole time.
It's like Lurrus doesn't even exist.
Yeah, and then they pay the 3 mana. I'm like, what imaginary action are they taking? Oh, this is a Lurrus deck.
All right. Any other band thoughts before we move on to another pretty interesting topic? All right, so we have some arena data about what formats are most popular. And this is data that's gathered by Untap.gg, which tracks your decks and so forth. So I guess it's worth mentioning that I guess it's the pool is users of Untapped GG, so there's probably some biases there. Maybe more in franchise players are more likely to know about a deck tracking site and use it or whatever. But regardless, Richard, what do the numbers say about what formats are actually popular on Arena?
All right, I'm pulling this off of a tweet from Cube April. So Untapped GG data over the last 7 days: Standard best of 1, 256,000 games. Alchemy best of 1, 19,000 games. Historic best of 1, 46,000. And then Standard best of 3, 90,000. Alchemy best of 3, 7,000. Historic best of 3, 14.5 thousand.
Wow. I mean, I think this shows that even if you like doubled some of the numbers of like best of 3, people do like best of 1. And you know what? Wow. I didn't know it was that popular.
Yeah, so the best of 1 versus best of 3 thing, actually, like, I honestly thought it might be a bigger gap than that based on some old numbers of like 97% of games are best of 1 or something that used to be thrown around. So even though best of 1's certainly, 5 times, 3 times more popular than best of 3 is, I didn't think that those numbers were super out of whack with my expectations. What was actually really surprising to me is Alchemy is just not popular. Like Standard, remember when Alchemy released and we had Andrew Cuneo on the podcast and we were talking about the possibility of Alchemy replacing Standard on Arena. Why would you play Standard when you could play Alchemy and not deal with, Goldspan Dragon, the unbuffed or unnerfed version or whatever? It seems like that definitely did not happen. Just looking at these numbers, Standard has played, 13 more times than Alchemy is on Arena as far as best of 1 is concerned, and roughly the same as far as best of 3. That's shocking to me, like literally shocked. I figured Standard would be more popular, but seeing Alchemy be way behind Historic even, wow, that format is not doing well. Whenever everyone complains and there's this big freak out, I always wonder, is this just, us as Magic players complaining because we're really good at it and we love complaining? Or does this actually impact how we're playing the game? In this case, it seems like all those complaints about Alchemy are being backed up by most people not playing the format.
Yeah.
This sounds like don't buy Alchemy cards. Wizards about to cut this thing, right? Like it's like what, like 7% as popular as Standard? Like it is on life support, I think, right? Like why would Wizards keep, devoting resources to making Alchemy rebalances and, adding the additional queue and all of that if so few people play? Like, it just doesn't seem worth it. So I think Wizards actually gives it some time to see if it turns around. But if these numbers persist, like, I think Alchemy's on the chopping block.
I hope it turns around. I hope it turns around. I'm going to be on the outside opinion here, as I usually am. But the thing is, I think Alchemy is... I like it. I like what it's trying to do. I think that there's a lot of hate on it. And, it's kind of... I can understand where the hate's coming from, but like at the same time, I like what they want to do with the format. Being able to patch things, take advantage of the digital space is something I've asked for from Magic for quite some time. If you want to be a digital game, I think you got to try to keep up. And this is the best way they could do it, right? There's still some things that need to be fixed in Alchemy, but specifically, I like what they try to do. So I really want, I hope that it at least picks up.
Yeah, I mean, I also like that Alchemy exists. I like players having more options and getting to choose. So I also like that as well. There's certainly drawbacks that we've talked about many times before with the economy and impacting Historic and all that stuff that I'm not going to get into again. So there's things I don't like about it. But I too hope that Alchemy is a legitimate option for the players who enjoy it. I will say I think these numbers might be a little bit tilted towards Standard just because of the timing of it. It'll be interesting to get this data again in like a month. Let's see what it looks like right after the next Alchemy set releases. Is it closer? Does Alchemy increase? Is this like Standard winning because we just got a new Standard set and we just got bannings and Standard is actually relatively decent right now? Or is this just
great
what it's
right now? That's another thing. Yeah.
So, or is this just what it's going to look like forever? So I think it'll be interesting to check back in on the data, but I don't know. At this point, it's definitely scary numbers if you are someone who enjoys Alchemy because, as Richard said, if it really is super unpopular compared to standard, how long do they keep supporting it? And again, I don't think they're going to make any changes, this week or this month. I assume they're going to give this a while to develop. They kept Brawl going for years when no one ever played Brawl before they added it to Arena and it kind of became more popular. So I don't think they're going to pull the plug on it immediately or in the near future, but certainly something to keep an eye out for, because wow, those numbers are shockingly bad. What do you think the reason for this is? Is it that people don't want to spend the money? Like, is that what's killing Alchemy, that people just don't have the money to buy more cards, that you need to play the format, or is it something else?
I think it's definitely rooted in the economy.
I think people don't care about Alchemy. So before we get up in arms about Alchemy, you need to get up in arms about best of one versus best of three, right? Like, best of three is clearly the superior option to best of one if you're talking about gameplay quality, skill expression, whatever, right? Like, if you want to play a quote-unquote balanced game, you need to play best of three over best of one. Yet, a lot more best of one is being played than best of three. So if people can't be bothered to play best of three, like, how can they be bothered to play Alchemy, which is like, fixed standard, right? Like, they don't care about how balanced it is or something, right? Like, whoever, this set of users Untapped GG has is like, they don't value that. So yeah, I think people just want a quick game. They get in, they do their stuff, they leave, and that's it. Like, they don't need to learn about this weird Alchemy thing with new cards, and it's complicated, it costs more. Like, they can't be bothered to play best of three, right? So I don't know, right? Is it best of three the bigger issue here than best of one?
Yeah, although I do wonder, and I don't have this data, I wonder how it's counted. Like, I wonder for like standard best of three, is it like normalized in a way to make up for the fact that a best of three match is 2 or 3 games when a best of one match is 1 game?
But even if you multiply it by 1.5, it doesn't even get close to it, right? Like, it's still under best of one. And even at a 50-50 split, wouldn't you expect it to be a lot higher in best of three for, Magic purists or spikes, right?
And I think it's probably even worse than these numbers suggest, because like I said before, I assume that the Untapped GG audience is more enfranchised than your typical Arena player, because you actually went through this extra step of finding a third-party website and signing up for it and creating an account so you can track your matches. If you're super casual or new, you probably didn't go through that. So I think that the numbers are actually probably even more skewed towards best of one than this suggests, because I think deeply enfranchised players are probably the biggest best of three audience. Yeah, I mean, I heard some people, I was reading the comments to this post on the Magic Arena Reddit where people were talking about it, and a lot of people said, well, I can't play best of three very easily on mobile. I like to just get on my phone and play a quick game while I'm, in the bathroom, taking a dump or whatever. Like, I can do a best of one game in that amount of time, but I can't do a best of three game. And that was kind of the overarching theme of why people play best of one, was essentially, I just don't have the time. I don't know if I sit down to a best of three game, if I'm going to run into Krim playing, his control deck, and it's going to take me 50 minutes to finish a match. If I do a best of one game, I know it's going to be over in 10 minutes. And if I got to do something else, I'll be able to do that. So I think there are reasons that best of one is more popular. I really hope that, and I think they have, that Wizards has taken a lesson that it doesn't work well as a tournament format, though, because every time we've actually tried to do competitive best of one, it has not gone really well on the tournament stage. So anyway, any other thoughts on our arena data or anything else we talked about before we answer some fish mail questions? All right, Richard, take it away with some fish mails.
All right, if you have questions, send them to @MGGoldfish with the hashtag MGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. Here's a question about triomes that we got triomes, so we should we should talk about that. Corel _Daybreak Games recently announced that they expect Moto to bring in 9 to 10 million in revenue this year. I thought it'd be higher given the price of tickets and packs. Is the player base just small now, or do you think folks just go infinite?
I mean, it's kind of like I'm thinking, like, does like a rental program have anything to do with that?
That's what I was going to say. I wonder how much of that is because of the rental programs, because a lot of players don't have to give Wizards really any money, or Daybreak really any money. You got to pay $5 to make an account. But if you're using rental programs, you don't really have to spend much more after that. And you go infinite in leagues at a 50% win rate. So you don't even have to be like super, super good to go infinite as far as getting your entry fee back and being able to play more in more matches. So I bet that's a big part of it. And I wonder if that'll be actionable from Daybreak. Like, I wonder if this change could get Daybreak to do a subscription model or their own like official loan program of some kind, because I think that's where most of the money is going at this point on Magic Online, is people are paying it to rent the cards rather than buy the cards.
I mean, it's just not loan, right? Like, even when you buy cards, you usually buy from a bot, right? Like, you buy from Card Hoarder or MTGO traders. That money does not go to Wizards. None of it goes, right? Like, only the initial purchase, whoever bought the card originally, and then for the rest of the life of that card, it's being traded between players. And it's the same in like the reason like we have secret layers now, right? Like, when you bought a card off Card Kingdom or SCG, like, they're making the money, right? And then when they buy from someone else to buy list and then they sell back again, Wizards doesn't see any of that money, right? So that secondary market is generating all the revenue, which is why you see with Arena, there is no secondary market. It all goes directly to Wizards' pocket, and they're making lots of money from it. So yeah, I think it's just part of like the model they have and the fact that they don't get a cut of secondary sales. It's not like eBay or something where you have to pay a fee, or like TCG Player, you pay a fee when you do a transaction. It's like free. So then Wizards doesn't get a cut of it.
And the other thing we've seen is a lot of limited play shifting to Arena. We see this reflected even in card prices, where some random Den of the Bugbear or whatever ends up being $50 on Magic Online just because people didn't draft very much. And I think that drafting is probably the most profitable thing as far as Wizards is concerned. So if most people are drafting on Arena now and switched over, I assume that cuts into the bottom line quite a bit as well. Because if you look at like the EV or something of various events on Magic Online, it's the limited events that make Wizards the most money like per player compared to someone playing a league or a constructed event.
Sorry, guys, it was me. I went so infinite during the last draft that what the Wizards' revenue tanked. I'm sorry. Or sorry,
This
Daybreak
was
Games
Richard's fault.
I will say the number is a little frightening, though. 10 million in revenue is honestly nothing. Wizards made, what, 1.2 billion last year with a B? That means Magic Online is really a inconsequential revenue stream if it's only making $10 million a year. Like, that's nothing. That's a couple secret lair drops or something to keep it going. So that part makes me a little bit nervous, and maybe it'll be different with Daybreak taking over, but it seems like if the revenue is that low, it doesn't seem that far-fetched that Wizards could just pull the plug on it at some point. I mean, I don't think it's happening because Daybreak and they're doing all this stuff, but that's just not a lot of money in the grand scheme of how much Wizards makes off of Magic.
Yeah, but Daybreak has it now, and they were happy making 9 to 10 mil a year on this. And they were thrilled. So it should be good, right?
Hopefully. I mean, I am hopeful. And they did say in the same announcement where they talked about this money stuff, they're planning on doing improvements, and, you know, they seemed gung-ho. Maybe they're just saying the right things, but they seem gung-ho about improving the game, making it better. So maybe this is a new dawn for Magic Online.
Yeah, now every card will have a swirl animation.
Yes. Man, hopefully they can improve you loaded Magic Online intro music, because my God, that turned back on after the most recent update, and it is probably the worst song ever written, honestly.
Right. It is the most toxic thing ever. I hate that. It's just like, what is this? I turned this off and now it's back.
So fix that, Daybreak. No more intro music, please.
All right. 11 Vicious. What do you think the chances are there will be dual or tricolored commands in New Capenna, like Prismari or Cryptic Command, for example?
Ooh.
That would be pretty cool. I'd be down for that.
My prediction is charms. I feel like every time we go to a 3-color set, we get a charm cycle. So maybe we get commands instead, but I would be really surprised if we didn't get charms.
Well, yeah, we didn't get let's not. I hope we get one that's like a maestro charm, not because surprisingly some of the old charms aren't that great.
They keep improving. I feel like these charms will be good. I feel like Wizards has like kind of powered up the modal spells, partly because of Besto one that we were talking about before. But I think the most recent batch of charms, like Abzan charm, that one's pretty decent. That one sees play or Sultai charm. So I think these charms will be good. But yeah, I'm predicting charms rather than commands.
I think we will definitely get tricolored modal spells. But what's the difference between a charm and a command? Like a command is, we have 3 mana commands. What's the difference between a charm and a command?
Command, you pick 2. You get 2 of the options. Charms,
two
you
of
get
the
one
options.
of the options.
You get
Charm is
super
one.
sandwich or super salad.
Yeah,
You get both.
Charms are one, and usually charms are uncommon and commands are rare.
What about the
traditionally.
escalate cards? What were those?
Ooh,
Are those commands? Charms? What do you?
Those
they
are-
were a single
those-
color, right? But they can escalate.
those were their own thing, I guess. And
Okay.
those were just their own thing.
I think we're gonna get something like some gimmick like that, where it's like a choose something, but like you're gonna get something special on top.
There'll definitely be a modal cycle, though. There's got to be at least one. There could even be 2. Who knows?
Isn't
There
that the
could be
only
lower
reason
rarity and higher
multicolored
rarity.
sets to like jam
I mean,
all these
basically.
weird effects together and then
That's why I love them. Like, you get those really cool cards like that. So I love tricolor sets. Those are my favorite sets. It's gonna be so good.
All right. Next question. Only way. Does anyone on the crew have a fish tank? Can you explain the nitrogen cycle?
Oh my goodness, I do not have a fish tank. We had
one.
fish. We had fish growing up. Oh my goodness, my fish story. So we had fish growing up, and I have a ton of siblings. So we each got to go and get one fish, like our own fish, and they lived together in the fish tank. But my little sister's fish was really mean and would always bite the tail of my fish. It was super nice and chill. And then one day we came home, and it had jumped out of the fish tank. We found it on the floor. It had literally driven it to jump out of the fish tank, and that was the end of my fish career. That was it. It broke my heart, my poor fish, and now I just can't do it.
What? How did it jump out of the fish tank?
Out of the top, it must have just been driven.
Are
from
you sure
the
your
tail
sister
bite.
didn't just scoop your fish out and dump it on the
Well,
wall and be like, I showed you?
Seth
That
had
could
the
also
Tony
be a
Hawk
that
of
could also be a
fish.
possibility. But yeah, so I do not currently have a fish. I also won a fish one time at the carnival. Did you ever play those carnival games where you got to throw the ping pong ball in the little goldfish tank? But that one only lived for like 5 days or something. I did
only
not
seen
think
this on
those are very.
TV.
I don't. We actually had them when I was a kid at the little like local towny carnival. Yeah, and I won one, but it only survived for like 5 days or something. I don't think they're very healthy. They're very healthy carnival
retrieve
fish.
scoops from your house, Seth. I'm not sure. I'm comfortable with this situation. Krim, have you ever had a
tank,
fish?
Richard?
Yeah.
No.
I did when I was like super duper young. It's been some time, but yeah, like holy cow. I try to think back to that fish and like what happened to it. I think I had a goldfish. I actually had a goldfish. I just don't remember what I did. I remember it didn't live for too long. And then I was devastated when it died.
My niece had a fish, like one of those like blue, I don't know what it was, like, you know, those like special fish. It was blue, and they went on vacation, so they gave me the fish to take care of. And you know, it's a pretty chill fish, took care of it. And then they came back from vacation, gave it back to them. And then like 3 weeks later it died. I'm like, oh no, it broke my heart. I hope I had nothing to do with it. I fed it well, I took care of it, but I was super sad. I like fish. I know most people don't like fish, even though I eat fish. I still like fish as a pet. I think fish are cool pets. So we should definitely get one for our mascot, like real scoops. But I'm super afraid it'll die. And then
Don't give it to me. You gotta keep it in your house. Maybe Tomer. Tomer kept the plan alive all the way to 50K subs, so he might be able to keep a fish alive. I vote Tomer.
I don't know the lifespan of a fish is either. But this is too much responsibility. All right, so thank you to everyone who sent in their questions for Fishmail. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 371 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard, Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a spectacular week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.